Roma are a team who have a lot to play for in the remainder of this season, still being in two competitions, the Serie A and the Europa League. In Serie A, not fighting to win the title. That is 99% gone to Napoli by now, but they've very much got a top four battle on their hands. And with tonight's defeat to Atalanta, I think that they're probably not the favourites anymore, given the form that AC Milan are in recent weeks and how good they looked in the Champions League last week as well. I know AC Milan have been quite inconsistent this year in Serie A, but when it comes to a team at their best, you'd back them over almost anyone in Serie A. But Roma, they now face the prospect of having to go all out to win the Europa League. I mean, it's not completely over getting top four for Roma. They are still on the same points as AC Milan, but it's just the fact that you feel more confident in Milan to be able to pull away from them and get that top four spot. There are still 7 games remaining. That's important to remember. But it almost feels a bit like Roma might have got a bit distracted by what's going on in the Europa League. And they did very well last year to win the Europa Conference League. And maybe they are, a team that tend to perform well in Europe. Different players cope better in different situations and adapt to different styles better. And Jose Mourinho, anyways, is a manager who has a phenomenal record in Europe. He's the only manager to have won all 3 European major trophies: Champions League, Europa League, Conference League. And the teams he's won those competitions with as well. Man United, the Europa League in 2017, that was the least impressive of all his victories. But winning the Champions League with Porto and Inter Milan. Now, don't get me wrong, the Inter Milan team he won it with was good, but they were still the underdogs. And Porto, that was just an unbelievable achievement. But it does feel as though Roma have got a bit distracted, and I was a bit confused by Mourinho's decision making in terms of his lineup in this game. In terms of dropping some of his very key players. Paulo Dybala being the main one. I know he's not been in amazing form in recent weeks, but when he came on, they just looked like they had a bit more about them, Roma. And it just seems like a decision that he should have started realistically, because when Dybala came onto the pitch, Pellegrini started to get involved a bit more. It just seemed to link up a little bit better. But for Atalanta, this is a brilliant result. They're a team as well who haven't had the greatest season ever, especially in comparison to some of their recent seasons. I think Gasparini's not done such a great job this year, but this performance, they weren't dominant by any means, but Rome were just so lacking in any sort of, I think threat's the right word, because they just didn't feel as though there was any point in the first half in particular where you felt as though Rome were going to score. Tammy Abraham was just so isolated, and nobody at all could really get the ball to him. There were a couple of occasions where he had like a half opportunity, and that's at best. But Roma just weren't attacking enough at all. But the opening goal from Atalanta, it is a piece of brilliance from Duvan Zapata in terms of just being a target man, brilliant holding up of the ball. The pass gets fired into him, and he hasn't got anywhere to turn. He's got a defender with his back to the defender, and he's got defenders either side, so he can't really turn one way, and he's not the most agile of players anyway. But what he decides to do is just take it out wide and try and get it back into the box, and he picks out Pasalic brilliantly, and it's a really good finish as well from Pasalic, a player who Hasn't had a good goal scoring season this year compared to previous years, but he took that goal amazingly well. And yeah, that gave Atalanta the lead in the first half. And I'll be honest, the first half, yeah, I've already said Roma weren't good enough at all in that first half. But I don't think Atalanta were great, to be honest. It was a first half that was really lacking in quality, I would say. But second half, substitutions changed the game a little bit. There were a few players who played reasonably well in the first half, though I will say that. One player who impressed me for Roma actually was the player at left wing back Zalewski. I thought he looked very good on the ball, very comfortable at not skinning a player, but just like twisting in and out, cutting in on himself, that sort of thing. And yeah, he might be one to look out for. But I don't watch tons of Italian football, but in this performance, I have to say, he did impress me. But it was Atalanta who eventually doubled their lead. And this time it was from the right back Toloi, who had too much space in the penalty area from a corner, if we're being honest. You do have to have a bit of luck in terms of the ball falling to you, but for a team that are coached by, a master of defensive tactics like Jose Mourinho, they should be doing better, in all honesty. It comes from a rebound, but even so, some of the marking was questionable at best throughout the game from Roma, I thought. But yeah, they started having a go a bit more in the last 20 minutes, Roma, especially after some of the substitutions, and they pulled one back through Pellegrini. It was a brilliant strike from Pellegrini, but you thought at that moment, right, this could be set up for an interesting final 10 minutes here, because Atalanta are going to want to make a late push for a Champions League spot. I mean, there are still 6-7 games to go, so it's not out of the realms of possibility. But Roma, they definitely want to keep their place in the top four in front of both Milan teams. But as soon as the ball goes back into play from the kickoff, it's just an absolute shocking error from Rui Patricio. It's like watching Robert Green from the 2010 World Cup for England. The way he just manages to sort of cup the ball into his chest, and he somehow just rolls it over his shoulder. And yeah, I mean, it's got to be one of the easier goals that Teun Koopmeiners will score in his career. He's a good player, by the way, Koopmeiners. I've watched him on a few occasions, both for club and country. And what I like about him is the fact that he can play multiple positions within multiple roles within a position is the better way to put it. Obviously, he's a midfielder, but he can play the defensive role in the midfield. He can play a box-to-box role, or even, as he demonstrated in this game, a further, more advanced role up the pitch, almost playing off Zapata at times. And yeah, there was one player also who I wanted to keep an eye out for, but he didn't end up playing that much of the game. That was Rasmus Højlund with, these goal-scoring exploits in the international break for Denmark. I was interested to see, because he's been linked with a lot of the big European clubs like Man United this season, but he only came on to the pitch towards the end of the game, and even then, the only time he was really involved, he messed up a counter-attack where Atalanta would have had the opportunity to make it 4, but in the end, it didn't really matter too much. But yeah, there was one sort of down moment for Roma, I guess, in Dybala clearly picking up an injury and spending the last 5 minutes of the game literally just limping across the pitch just because he couldn't get subbed. And yeah, it was just one of them really, where the defender, he's clearly seen Dybala and he's realised he can get the ball and also potentially hurt the player, and he did hurt the player. I think it was Palomino who did it, who himself came on as a substitute for an injury to Jim City. So, yeah, it wasn't a very nice challenge, to be honest, on Dybala. And actually, Pellegrini did hit the post from the following free kick. So, yeah, fine margins for Roma in this game at times in the final 20 minutes or so. But yeah, and also what I would say about Dybala is he just seemed to snatch at things even before he picked up the knock. He had a couple of chances, and one of them he just completely skied, and the other one it was going off target but got blocked. And neither one of them, he didn't seem cool when he struck the ball. It was almost like he just there was no part of his body that was relaxed when he hit it at all. No confidence in himself. I don't think, like the sort of confidence we saw Dybala have when he was, at his pomp with Juventus 5 or 6 years ago in his first few seasons there. So yeah, it's just not nice to see when a player's clearly struggling a little bit. I mean, he's not had a bad season this year, to be fair. Dybala, it's certainly been his best season in 3 or 4 years, I'd say, but yeah, it's clearly taken a toll on him, the lack of form he has had in the past few years, I think. But yeah, anyway, it will be an interesting race for top 4 in Serie A for the remainder of the season. And Roma obviously have the Europa League to fight for as well. So I'd certainly be interested in following that. Anyway, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.